Hey everybody, Dean Cottrill here. I am the Senior Vice President for T3 Sixty's Brokerage Consulting Division. In a way to support the industry, especially in this time of challenge and change, we're starting these Tactical Tuesdays. Today is our first, and we're going to have these Tuesdays for the foreseeable future. We also, on supporting the industry, we also are having a very high-level talk on Fridays. We call them Friday Fireside Chats, and that's with Stefan Swanpool, our Chairman and CEO, and our President, Jack Miller. And those are at 5 o'clock on Fridays. And then following the Tuesday, which brings us today, that's where we're going to do a deeper dive into Tactical Tuesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern, where we're going to get really deep on certain topics and subjects. We're going to bring in our experts on our team to talk about those key areas to help support you through this time and help you not only survive, but thrive in whatever the market conditions are. So with us today, we have Jonathan Peterson. Jonathan is our Vice President of Brokerage Technology. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Give everybody a little background, a little synopsis.
Yeah, from perspective of my background, I've been in the industry for over 20 years, more on the accounting side. Worked with Lone Wolf for about 13 years, as actually was the first U.S. employee they hired. And I have been in various consulting roles now for a long time, working with a lot of brokers. And so I have quite a bit of knowledge of the back office space. And so hopefully some of the things that we learned from the downturn in 2008, I think for a lot of people out there, it probably feels like that Japanese proverb of, fall 7 times, stand up 8. There's been a lot of experience here. So we've kind of tried to boil that down a little bit and give you some information that's useful.
Good. Jonathan, you're actually humble. You're an expert at the back office systems that help organizations run much more efficient. So that's why, in talking about this, you see the title there, 4 Stages of Real Estate Thriving in this Market Slowdown. We're going to look at 2 key areas today on this call. The framework for it is about 20 minutes of good information, material for you, high level, but also then open up the Q&A, question and answers for another 10 minutes or so for anybody who has any questions. When we're talking about 4 stages, one of the things that this has brought about, and we look at this here at T3 Sixty as an event. This isn't something we saw like in 2008 with the financial crisis and now working through that over multiple years. This is an event that we have never seen before, where everyone's been asked to stay at home, social distancing and all the like. And that's brought about a lot of challenges for your operations. And so from that, what's come about because of this event is it's actually resembling a lot like the hyper supply market when the market completely changes. We do see this as a short-term, 60, 90, probably 190 to 120 day event that's going to affect your bottom lines and your units. But in that, it's going to resemble a hyper supply market. And that's why we have this on here, because we want to talk about some key things that you can focus on in those areas in a hyper supply market to help you take advantage of it. We're going to dive into 2 key areas: operational, which we're going to move into right now, and we're also going to move into sales, talking about buyers and sellers and how to take fully advantage of the current situation, the current climate that we're in. So let's go ahead and move into the operational side and look at our agenda here of topics on assessing operations. Jonathan, I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this.
Yeah, for assessing operations, we broke it down into some key metrics and things you can do that are immediate wins or immediate value. Evaluating your current expenses, reducing and eliminating non-essential expenses, reducing and eliminating new expenditures, reviewing all leases and renegotiating those, creating a budget. A lot of brokers have just, budget's been one of those things that's kind of an afterthought. This has never been a better time to really do that. We'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Monitoring and reviewing your agent's accounts receivable. It's kind of the fear of death by 1,000 cuts, money that is owed to you. Reducing salaries. Unfortunately, in the circumstances, there's some things we have, at least for suggestions around reducing salaries and increasing staff. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about analyzing your current systems. It's probably never a better time to focus on things that internally in this downturn.
Great. Let's dive in.
So along the lines of evaluating expenses, right now, I'm interacting with a lot of technology companies as well as brokers, and I'm seeing that, there's a willingness to work with people. So I think it's never a better time to really renegotiate your terms with a lot of these vendors, agreements, reviewing marketing expenses, instead of having weekly expenses, maybe reducing it down to bi-weekly or monthly, taking out eliminating some of the non-essential travel expenses and on-site meeting expenses and things like that. Analyzing current software licenses is a key one. Right now, a lot of the companies that are out there have either come out with pricing that's COVID-19 pricing, or realize that in the current market that they need to work with you. So I think it's never been a better time, especially since a lot of these licenses are based, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but they're based upon the office size or company size. And then reviewing internal controls. It's a really good time to really look at how are office supplies ordered within your company and marketing expenses ordered within your company, because I see a lot of occasions, or I've seen a lot of occasions, where the lack of control has caused a spike in those expenses. So it's a really good time to look.
That's such a critical thing too. I see working with the brokers out there across North America and Canada, United States, is that's one thing that a lot are missing, is those internal controls, the deep dive into a profit and loss statement, having ability to look back 24 months, watching trends. That's something that could be very advantageous.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Good to go, Shannon.
And again, reducing non-essential expenses, couriers, cleaning services. I talked to a broker yesterday who's eliminating all the window cleaners in his office. So there are some definite things in looking at the details of your expenses that you can immediately cut down or reduce or expand or change that can help in this process.
Yeah, one of the things too that many of the brokers, we actually saw across the country in January and February, an uptick in units, showings. Everything was going at a very fast pace. It actually resembled the market back in 2006, 5 and 6, really at the height of the market. We're seeing some incredible numbers. So you might see a lot of your business, like right now, March, for example, a lot of brokers are closing a lot of deals and they think, you know what, their opens are off, open units, their new sales are off. And that's where you have to really get ahead of this curve. And this is what Jonathan's sharing with you. Be proactive. Each line item, go through each one of them and either eliminate them or reduce these kind of services here. Save the dollars now, because you're going to need them down the road here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, fully evaluate new expenditures. Are there things that you can push off for a later date or eliminate altogether? As Dean was saying, it's important to look at all those line items, look at those things. Are there things that can be put off? There's a lot of belief that this is going to be a 60, 90, 120 day cycle. So pushing things off will really, I think, help you weather the storm.
Completely agree.
And then, Dean, you were going to talk about
definitely.
This part.
This is something. I was running a real estate company in Mid-Atlantic market. It was at the time, it was a lot of offices. We ended up having to go through a process through that downturn of closing and changing that whole format of that operation because of the challenges we're facing. Again, we're not seeing that happening long term. We're seeing a short term event that's taking place here. So one of the things that you have advantage, and you've seen some like Cheesecake Factory and others have really come out and said to the landlords, we're not going to pay you rent in the month of April. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that you should look to discuss with your landlord the idea of maybe a couple strategies on this. Number one, get some type of benefit of lowering the rent for a period of time, or providing some type of offset where you push it back. You also could potentially negotiate the lease term where you extend the term of the lease, extend the number of years left on it, and get a lower rate today. So there's certain things that you could use as opportunities in today's climate to help you offset lower expenses, but also get you put yourself in a better financial position. So when you merge locations, or if you're exiting the market, some other strategies, financially calculate worst case scenarios. You always want to look at potential loss. We call it breakage. So what would be the breakage of gross commission income that could lose if you merge two offices? And does that make sense for you to do that? Try to retain exceptional staff. This is an opportunity for you to make sure you have the best of the best. So if you have some great staff, you have to merge offices or work through that process. If that becomes something you need to do, you want to, of course, retain those top staff people. Evaluate selling operations to others, or also franchising. So if you have the ability to franchise, or if you're thinking about exiting a market, it's a great opportunity just to go ahead and sell it to a top producer in the market or another company in the market, where you can then get some revenue coming in from that. Again, if you're exiting a market, if you're exiting and moving out, that's a good strategy to think about as you pull back potentially in the next 60, 90 days, depending on how this trend continues.
Dean, one thing I might add is you did mention, and it's good to reiterate, that this is a really unprecedented time. This isn't like a normal, this isn't like the events of 2008. And so I actually spoke with a large brokerage out of Florida, excuse me, that was renegotiating with a lot of his leases to do a base plus commission, because his feeling was these the companies he's renting space from, they have connections, and if they're sending business his way, it could help. So is kind of an out of box thinking, but I think that's important in these times. Is a lot of this is just, what are the things we can do to weather this? Because the reality is this is going to, we are going to come back, and we're going to come back full speed, but it's just,
well, that's something. We had some clients, I'm sorry, Jonathan. We had some clients that went back, were hesitant to have that conversation with their landlord, but they're clients of ours. We were talking about strategies. They went ahead and did that. And we're very surprised that the landlord was open to it, gave them two different options to either defer or to reduce X dollars for a period of time. So it ended up becoming a really good opportunity for them to get some type of savings today. So be proactive on that front.
Absolutely.
Okay, Shannon.
Creating a budget. Now, you have to forgive me because I come from a financial background, but I've always believed that in the real estate industry, one of the things I see a lot of brokers not doing is creating a budget. I think now that things are not as busy or as hectic, because that's usually the excuse I always heard we're too busy. It's too much going on. I don't have time to sit down and do this. Really, to me, a budget serves as a map to your profitability. It's really important, especially now. It's going to help you better manage these income and expenses. It's really looking at the details of that. And quite a few of the software programs that are out there in the market have a budgeting capability within them. And with that, there's the ability to increase or decrease. So if you don't know where to start, I always say just take your last year's numbers and, increase or decrease them depending on what you feel is going to happen in your market. And that way you've at least got a starting point. And I always say it's really important to stress that a budget is a living, breathing thing. It's not something you just create and then there it is. You reevaluate it on a monthly or even quarterly basis. So you may need to pivot and change things. But really, to me, it's a crucial piece to really understanding where all your money is going and flowing. So.
And that's something you're the expert on. So you have some incredible knowledge on. There are additional tools out there, systems that are available to brokers that enable them to really take a deep dive, understand their numbers. They don't have to be CPAs to get it.
Yeah.
But the idea of QuickBooks, for example, is not the best use of how to evaluate a business as an entrepreneur.
No, it really isn't, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But the reality is, it's also a good time to look at what are the systems you have in place. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, QuickBooks is just not. It's missing too much, and I find a lot of brokers who are using QuickBooks have Excel spreadsheets kind of coming out of their ears to manage everything they can't manage in QuickBooks. So it's kind of a crucial piece to running your operation.
Okay, Shannon.
And this is depending on your business model, of course. If you're more of a traditional split per office that doesn't have a lot of accounts receivable, this isn't as applicable. But in a Remax or a company that has accounts receivable being a pretty big source of revenue, it's really probably an important time, especially now, to look at who are the at-risk agents, who are the agents who owe you balances and are a risk to you losing that money. Creating payment plans for those, working with your agents just like you're expecting your vendors to work with you, that if they owe you a large amount of money, giving them some sort of options to pay it back, offering credit cards or debit card options. It's so inexpensive now to use that as a feature or use that as a benefit, that there's ways I think you can really weather this and look at what are the risks you have as far as collections goes.
Okay, excellent. Shannon, okay.
And then we talk, where, Dean and I will kind of probably talk both on this about reducing salaries, but, looking about, is it necessary to reduce a percentage, or, given how, it's again, state by state, but given how things are happening, do you furlough employees? There's a lot of options I think you have here to look at your staff and look at your salaries and see if there's ways to weather this. Because salaries typically is number one expense in most companies.
You have to think about this too, because the bullets that you see there is the second one. Some employees SB, exempt from reduction, should be is what is SB. So as you're looking at your dollars and cents, some brokers proactively have talked to their support staff and have made some changes, have made some adjustments, potentially pushed off, said, you know what, if we can push this and reduce the salary expense by X dollars, that'll get us, that'll give us a 90-day or 120-day window that gets us here, and then I'll make you whole or something like that. There's some things you could do and be proactive on that front. Not if you don't have to do it, but it's something to consider. If you look at if you've got a 120-day window of resources and you're sitting in a good place, that's different. If you're not, then be proactive. Many brokers don't have 120 days, 180 days of resources available to them. So this is something could be more on the front burner for you, but have those conversations. If you do have some really top leadership, some top staff, you might want to make exceptions to that rule just because you don't want to lose people. You actually will see some true colors too. Some people might come to you proactively and say, you know what, I get it's a hard time. I get this is an event. It's going to be a period of time and we'll come out of this. I'm willing to pull back a little bit too. So some of your staff might even be proactive and even already approached you. Gotta love those guys. Go ahead, Shannon. Yeah, they get it.
And reviewing your in-office staff and the job descriptions, one of the things to look at too is, are there things you can do to outsource or contract? Consulting, consultants are, less of a burden on you as far as your expenses.
Mm-hmm. It's always something to look at.
Yep.
And this is the latest and greatest that we just got off the wire, with the new legislation that just passed. You definitely want to check with your state about your unemployment benefits for employees. You see there's some federal benefits that have come across to being administered at the state level. $600 a week for 4 months, plus extensions and state level benefits. This, just as a quick aside, guys, this PowerPoint is going to come out with the recording of this call. So you'll be able to have all these slides and be able to come back to this. The exact amount depending on the employee's reported income. So that's something that's going to be to the state. And then also there's that one-time cash payment of $1,200 per person and $500 per child for U.S. taxpayers that should arrive in roughly, they're saying 3 weeks via direct deposit or check. All right. It depends on their income, and they're going to go from 2019 tax returns if they've got those. If they don't, they're going to go from 2018. Anything I missed on that, Jonathan?
No, that's pretty much it.
Good. Excellent.
Now, this is, I think, we alluded to this a minute ago, which is analyzing current systems. A lot of, and I approach this a couple different ways. One is, if you have been hesitant to migrate off of QuickBooks onto one of the industry-specific accounting systems, I think it's a critical time to do it. Because it typically it's hard to do that because it can be a labor-intensive process. But this doesn't just include accounting systems. Really, what I would say is look at all your technology, and are there technology improvements that you've been delaying, whether it's a transaction management system or an accounting system. Are there things you've been delaying simply because it just was too labor-intensive to do? This downturn could be a perfect time to really level set and look at improving operations within your company. So access your current, assess your current systems, tackle any technology improvements, and streamline legacy systems. It's really easy to get into the habit of, well, that's how we've always done it. I used to go into a lot of companies when I would help them with their technology and say, what, give me an idea of what you're doing. And when they would show me systems, a lot of times, some of them, they'd say, well, this is how it's always been done. We've always done it this way. It's never a better time to really sort of turn that spotlight inward and really look at, are there systems that we can, change immediately. And look at the licenses that you have for these. Again, a lot of these companies are offering pricing that's really competitive, and because they realize exactly what I'm saying here, that this is a really critical time to focus on the operations.
And that's something we provide technology audits. So at some point we get to a position you really want to take a deep dive, and you don't want to do it yourself, or that's not your specialty. We can help support that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Shannon.
Absolutely.
All right, assessing sales. Let's dive into, because now we're moving into the sales side of the world. This is the agenda. We're going to talk about buyers, sellers, under contract, current under contract, buyers or sellers, and then also it says property management. We're really talking about additional revenue streams in that fourth point on the agenda. First, on buyers, again, this is a shift in the market, so you have to get your mind around it. And leaders lead. So, okay, and I loved it. We had a client of ours just throw out, in leaders, and if there's a fire, they're the ones that run into the fire, all right? They don't run away from it. So knowledge, and you having knowledge and sharing that knowledge is going to be very beneficial to your operation. You might not know everything. We don't know everything. But that's constantly keeping them informed with the latest and greatest information is going to be very helpful to keeping you out in the forefront. On the buyer side, there's a shift going on right now. It's moving from a seller's market to a buyer's market. All right, and that's the absorption rate under 6 months. Many of your markets, they're churning in 30 days, 60 days. You're getting homes under contract on average. That's going to slow. And as that slows, things change. Positions and psychology changes between buyers and sellers. And you have to get your mind around that, get your agents also, and also your buyers and seller clients. So total sales units, you'll see them coming down. We're already seeing, if you, I went to Showing Time, for example, they have a United States map. They showed the down of the showings, how it's reflected compared to prior year. Some areas are 45% down in showing activity. Some areas are over 50%, 57% down. You can actually pull up your state and look at that. I guess the bottom line on that is people are still looking at houses in some areas. Some areas I understand you're shut down, but in other areas you're able to show houses. You're not completely at zero, but the numbers are down. So sales units are going to decline. Days on market will lengthen. It's going to strengthen out the days on market. Inventories will start to increase because you're not going to have that turn, that burn rate that you're having. So some of the listings, you'll have some sellers who will say, you know what, I don't want people walking through my house. I'm worried about the virus. I'm going to pull my home off the market. You're going to have a number of those. You're going to have some sellers that need to sell. And so as the market, the buyers slow down, the buyers showing slow down, you're going to see them being a little more aggressive on pricing and things like that. Buyer agents should inform clients of market changes. Keep them informed of what's happening, what's going on here, so they can take full advantage of that. Next slide, we're going to move in sellers. So the sellers, this is something in an education process here where the units are going to decline. We're already seeing that. Inventories will increase, right, because of the reasons I just shared. Also, you have sellers on the fence that were considering selling, but like the stock market, when stocks are going higher, people don't want to sell their stocks because they're worth more money tomorrow than they were today. When they start going down, that's when people are like panic and they jump off the fence. They let me get rid of this while it's still worth something, right? Sellers now, you have some that have been sitting on the fence. They might be close to retirement or whatever might be going on in their life. And they see a change in the market and they say, you know, well, I need to get out of here. Let me get out because the market's just appreciated. The values are up a little bit. I want to put my home on the market. I want to sell. So you'll see an additional increase in inventory, which will slow down the number of days on market as well. Motivated sellers, they're going to reposition their properties. They're going to get it. They're going to do that. But one of my approaches for you is to be the last one here is very proactive in working with your agents to approach sellers and to talk about pricing their home very competitively in the market, in today's market. That's critical in a changing marketplace when you move into what we're moving into and what we're in. If as buyers and sellers under contract, reach out. These are where you want to make sure everyone feel comfortable as they work through this. Everyone's got their anxiety here. So you want to ease that anxiety. Again, information is king. Provide them the latest and greatest information, help them through the process. And real estate's a great long-term investment. So you might have to go to that also and talk about long-term investments. How real estate is a really good investment and they shouldn't jump on this. They should stay there and close on their transactions, and you guys will help them through that process.
Yeah, Dean, I just got off the phone with a broker yesterday that is actually locally in the Bay Area that's actually reaching out and calling all of her under contract.
Yeah.
And assuring them of this is what's happening. We're the expert in this industry. We know what we're doing. This is just, and assuring them. And she said it really went a long way. People really appreciated that.
Yeah, that means a lot, especially from an owner of the operation or the manager of the office, things like that. That's excellent. Additional revenue streams, something Jonathan and I wanted to talk about is the additional revenue streams that you should really have in place. And if you don't, consider putting them in place. Go ahead,
And that
Jonathan,
is,
you want to talk?
yeah, property management is a big one. I know a lot of brokers survived other downturns by having a property management division. It really, quite a few brokers I talked to out of the Las Vegas area said that that's the only way they survived back in 2008.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have property management, it's something you should look at. There's an ample opportunity there, and it can be a good survival revenue stream.
Yep. Yeah, and think of this, you have 62, 63, 64% of home ownership in the United States. It could go up as high in the high 60s when it was in 2006 or 7. But the rest of everybody is renting, right? So when those sales go down, units go down, people then go rent if they're fearful. So that's property management is a great way to have the ability to take and capture that. And also feed each other. Someone might be renting in an area before they buy. Someone might be having their seller house and then go rent for a time. So you can feed each other back and forth, and they're two good revenue sources. The other one here is MSAs, marketing service agreements. This is where title, warranty, mortgage, where you can create a marketing service agreement and get some revenue coming in from these vendors, these other third parties, where you can get an offset and have another revenue stream to help support your brokerage. There's other avenues there too, but this is the closest and easiest for you to move down that path. All right, so let's do a recommendation. Let's talk about best practices and talking some brokers out there and some best practices. Minimum reduction, when you do, like Jonathan said, take each line item, go through each line item. You should see a reduction at least 4 to 5% in expenses. Frankly, I think you can do better than that, and I encourage you to do better than that. I would look at your open units right now and how that varies from last March. And if it's down 15, 20, 30, 40, 50%, you have to equate that how much less money you're going to have. And that should motivate you on the expense side as you go through those line items and as you're thinking through how do I need to reduce my expenses. Coach agents to apply operational cost cutting also to personal lives. Jonathan, you want to address or talk about that at all?
The coaching agents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of, in fact, one of the things I've seen recently is a lot of brokers who are holding money aside for their agents in a tax withholding to reduce the chance of there being wage garnishments, but also just, kind of showing them that you're invested in their success, and then helping them. I know one of the brokers that is doing this is doing it for a small fee, but then using that money essentially to bring in an accountant who then advises them on best practices. So there's quite a few ways you can really, show some solidarity toward your agents that you're there for them.
Some other avenues too is like what we talked about for you is approaching your landlord. If they're renting, if your agents are renting, they can approach their landlord, have that conversation proactively. If they're mortgage, credit card companies, very open to having conversations. So be proactive on that side, help coach them to help them save some money and be able to ride this out as well. Regular virtual updates, check-ins with staff. We're seeing best practices that brokerages have gone to daily meetings, their staff, 8 a.m. in the morning. Agents updated 8:30, 9 o'clock every day, and they're having really good turnout. Also, we had one offer more marketing sales trainings. It's a great opportunity to do that virtually. We had one broker owner who's doing a book club basically every day. They're actually taking a book that's all about business and helping them be more successful. And they read a chapter a day, and then they get on the call the next morning and they talk about that chapter. And then they move on to the next chapter and do it the next day. So some ideas for you, best practices. Go ahead, Shannon. Also have agents work on buyer and listing presentations. It's a great opportunity for you also as the broker owner to make some adjustments, improve what you have in your value offering, your proposition, what you give to your agents. This is a good one. Reach out to media and radio. They're looking for people to talk about how it's impacting small business. So this is where you can reach out and be proactive, create a good contact list. That's one thing we really dive into in our fellows program is talking about public relations, 6 key areas of how you can improve the awareness of who you are as an organization to the market that you serve, the buyers and sellers. One way here is to reach out to media. They're looking again for people to come to them, give them information that they could utilize in their, whatever it is, media, radio, news, you name it. And then email database with a non-typical coronavirus update. So this is the idea came as a best practice because everyone's giving the same old, not same, but the same kind of coronavirus update that they're hearing from the CDC or whatever it might be. And the idea was give them something unique and different. So think about something you can do a little twist on it that's actually very interesting. That's not the typical, it's non-typical coronavirus update. That could be more enlightening. Frankly, like the book club idea, that was pretty good. So here's some action steps for everybody. We do put these, what we just, and Jonathan just shared on the guidelines, the operational side, and what we talked about on the sales side. We have these on the downturn guidelines. You can see the address right there. You can also register for upcoming Tactical Tuesdays. Again, they're going to be every Tuesday for the foreseeable future. You're at 1 o'clock Eastern. To register, there's the link. Contact us directly if you'd like to reach out to Jonathan. There's his email and there's mine. If anybody has any questions as we wrap up here, just go to the chat window at the bottom and just type in your question. We can address any questions that anybody has. And then next week, just to give you an insight into next week, leveraging people resources and economic slowdown. We're going to have Kelly White with us. Kelly White is our Senior Vice President of T3 Talent. She places C-level and others talent into organizations around the United States. And so she's going to be here to talk about that. If you want to register, there's the address for you to register. And if you want to submit questions ahead of time, we're getting this all refined. We're fine-tuning this. So we're going to ask for, you can send questions ahead of time right to Shannon, the T3 Sixty, if you care to do that. All right. And I see in the chat window, we've just got some input on how you can sign up.
Links. Yeah, there's some links in there.
Yep. Great. Autumn, thanks. Thanks for your message there, Autumn. Great stuff. Good. Okay, guys. I don't see any questions. So, Jonathan, great job. Appreciate you being on, all your support. And again, if anybody wants to look at your accounting systems, back office, your technology, Jonathan's the man. You can reach out to him directly or reach out to T3 Sixty. We also have one additional thing here we're adding to help the industry as well during this time. And I almost forgot, so I apologize. Ask T3 Sixty. Anybody wants to schedule a 30-minute free consulting call, feel free, go right to that web address. And then Kelly is the one who will be the one responding, manning that, and then we'll get it signed up. We'll get you signed up with 30 minutes free for anybody out there who'd you like to talk to. And we also, Chris just put the link in the chat window there as well. All right. Anything else, Shannon, on the?
I think we're good. I'm looking.
Yeah, right. The last reminder, guys, is Fridays. We have the Friday fireside chat. Let's try to say that 10 times fast, everybody. Fireside Friday chats with Stefan and Jack. It's at 5 o'clock Eastern time. And then we'll have a Tactical Tuesday next Tuesday. So look forward to seeing you all there and reach out to us if we can be of help to you. All right. Stay safe.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.